Hi, class. I hope you liked the wild robot yesterday. I know it left off at a really good place. I thought I would read chapter 10 again, the reminder, even though you read it, because I think the last sentence is really important for us to understand. So it says, chapter 10, the reminder. I should remind you, reader, that Roz had no idea how she had come to be on that island. She didn't know that she had been built in a factory and then stored in a warehouse before crossing the ocean on a cargo ship. She didn't know that a hurricane had sunk the ship and left her crate floating on the waves for days until it finally washed ashore. She didn't know that she had been accidentally activated by those curious sea otters. As the robot looked out at the island, it never occurred to her that she might not belong there. As far as Roz knew, she was home. I think that sentence that says she might not belong there and she never even knew is going to be really important in the rest of the book. So let's go on to chapter 11. The robot sleeps. Roz stood on the peak and watched the sun sink behind the ocean. She watched shadows slowly spread over the island and up the mountainside. She watched the stars come out one by one until the sky was filled with 1,000,000 points of light. It was the first night of the robot's life. She activated her headlights, and suddenly bright shafts of light were beaming out from her eyes and illuminating the whole mountaintop. Too bright, so she dimmed them. And then she turned them off and sat in the darkness and listened to the chorus of nighttime chirps. After a while, our robot's computer brain decided it was a good time to conserve energy. So she sat and anchored her hands to the rocks. Her non-essential programs switched off, and then, in her own way, the robot slept. I want to point out this word non-essential right here, especially with the COVID. They're talking, about non-essential and essential items. Well, here, this author happened to use that word in our book. Chapter 12, The Storm. When I read the title, The Storm, I picture and I wonder if something's going to drive this character to have to move to a different place, because we know authors do that when they build chapter to chapter. Roz felt safe up on the mountaintop, so she spent the next few days and nights perched on the peak. But everything changed one afternoon when a low-flying cloud crept up the mountain and Roz found herself surrounded by white. When the world faded back into view, she noticed more clouds floating south past the island. Then she heard a deep rumble behind her. The robot turned her head and saw that the sky was filled with a swirling wall of darkness. Light flickered here and there, and more deep rumbles. A storm was approaching. It just wasn't any storm. It was as fierce as the one that had sent the cargo ship to the ocean floor. The wind picked up, and at first the drops of rain tapped against the robot. It was time to go. Roz unclamped her hands and began sliding down the peak. Hot sparks flew from where her body scraped against the leaning slab of stone. As soon as her feet hit the soil, she was off and running. The rain fell harder. The wind blew faster. The lightning flashed brighter. The thunder cracked louder. So much rainwater was falling that rushing rivers of runoff started springing up everywhere. Roz splashed down the mountain, searching through the gloom for any kind of shelter. But she should have watched where she was going. Her heavy feet slipped and tripped, and she tumbled right into a mudslide. Our robot was helpless. The river of mud whisked her downhill, slamming her into the rocks and dragging her through the bushes and sweeping her straight towards a cliff. Mud was pouring off the cliff like a waterfall. Roz frantically clawed at the ground, grasping for anything to hold on to, but the flow only carried her faster toward the edge. And just as she was about to plunge over the side, she came to a hard, sudden stop. Mud surged around her, sprang into her face, and pinned her against some solid thing. She blindly felt with her hands and recognized the thick roots and the trunk of a pine tree. In an instant, she was pulling herself up into the branches. The wind whipped across the mountainside, and Roz heard a familiar thunk of pine cones pelting her body. But she didn't mind them. She was just happy to be safe from the mud flow. The robot locked her arms and legs around the tree and waited for the storm to blow over. So I'm going to stop reading there today, and you're going to continue seeing what happens with Roz. We know right now she's safe up into the tree, but I wonder what adventures will meet her next. Bye, guys. Miss you.